Check, check, check. All right. All right, welcome to CocoaHeads for September. I'm just looking down here at the touch bar. DeckSet has touch bar support now, so that's super handy because I forgot to change the screen sharing. Anyway, welcome. Quick hi to anyone who's new, anyone who hasn't been to CocoaHeads before. I think I recognise everybody here tonight. Yes. I know a couple of you have only been once before, but I still recognise you. Tonight's topic is automation and tooling, and unfortunately Joe couldn't make it, but he's still on the next slide. Oh no, I took him out already. Okay, well it's not unfortunate. She wasn't talking anyway. No, we've got automation tooling. Stu was going to do a quick something, but I haven't seen him walk in yet, so we're going to just wing it tonight. There he is, speak of the devil. Yep. Gavin's going to do our month that was. Jet's talking on Xcode templates. And Ben is going to talk about iPhone X 10. If you're wondering who I am, no one will be wondering who I am tonight. Who are you, Jesse? I keep changing this. This month I'm an independent iOS developer. Some days I'm delivering coffee beans. Yeah. The agenda is the same as usual. We may or may not be able to finish presentations before pizza. Our sponsor tonight is realestate.com.au. I put Prasanna's name on there because... He's the only one left that you know. Ooh. But there's a few of you here from REA. Tina's here, next door. Who else? Tina, did you want to jump up and say hi from REA? No one else?
Hi from REA. No, it's good to be. Actually, you used to work at Outware too, so both the company I work for sponsors the CocoaHeads. It's amazing. Can't do anything.
Thank you, Tina. And thanks to Outware, exactly. Tina, did you want to speak for Outware as well? Outware's been great this year, sponsoring a few. They've sponsored a few months, and they've given us the venue the whole year. There's normally Wayne and Benedict here, and I saw Wayne before, but that's okay. I'm going to jump into some general business first. The Realm World Tour was yesterday. How was that? That was here as well. Who turned up to the Realm World Tour? How many presentations?
Oh, it was just Tom.
Oh, was it? I should have got him to speak. Maybe I should have reached out and got him to speak tonight. Anyway.
Yeah, he's flying back today. So.
Okay. Next week is Yao Connected Conference. That's come up really, really quickly. Is anyone heading to Yao? Cool. Anyone here speaking at Yao? There's a couple more. There's a couple more normal people. Who's hiring? Who here from their respective companies is hiring? Do you want to just put your hands up? Oh, I'll go around the room, Sean.
Yeah, a bit awkward because I know half of you guys. We're hiring we've actually got quite a lot of work on at the moment, and we need iOS developers, Android developers, QA test engineers as well. So if you've got a bit of a testing bent, again, I probably know most of you. I'm not sure whether this is relevant or not. Yeah, so we've got a range of things going on. Have a chat to me, Ryan, Oliver is coming back there, Renault is sitting over there.
Awesome. down that side, who else did I see? Stu.
I'm Stu with a company called Apex doing localized construction software. We're full up with all your iOS developers, but we still need Android and parts of that to get experience. So if you're an iOS dev that dabbles in other things, really play with nice stuff, but also change as well. So yeah,
Outware.
There's a from Outware, so iOS, Android, DevOps, integration services, you name it. So if you're interested, you can just stay tomorrow morning, you can have an interview.
I'll keep going right-hand side, coming forward. Tyrone.
So I'm Tyrone, I'm from SportsBet. You've probably heard of SportsBet. We have a very big, popular app, very popular this time of year. If that sounds interesting to you, just go to work@sportsbet.com.au and send us an application. Looking for iOS developers.
And it's written in Swift, yeah?
It's written in an eclectic mix of Objective-C, Swift, and JavaScript.
Good answer. Good answer. All right. Sounds like there's jobs for everyone tonight. That's excellent. All right. So I put an announcement out. This still sits in the general business category, but I put an announcement out today on the blog and on Slack. I haven't put it on Twitter and I haven't sent an email blast around to everyone yet. But CocoaHeads summer break is usually December. I beg your pardon, it's usually January, and we meet for the first month in the new year in February. This year, I'm taking that a little bit further, and we're not going to meet in November, December, and January, but we'll be back in February. The reason for that is because I'm changing my mindset to look forward to 2018, and I think rolling the months every 4 weeks it's a lot of effort, and I think in order to kind of recalibrate things for 2018, I need a bit more of a break. And part of that break is reaching out and using the time that would otherwise be doing meetups and preparing presentations, et cetera, rallying sponsors, everything. Part of that time will be reaching out and getting everyone else more involved. So CocoaHeads at this point, I'm all set for next month. I'm really looking forward to AR Kit, and setting the topics ahead of time has been one of my mitigating elements of trying to be more organized. But CocoaHeads needs everyone's input going forward. I mean, my involvement, it will still be the same. It's more just trying to share the load. I've written a really nice blog post that I'm linking in a second, but we're looking for feedback, number one. If you've got any ideas or something's wrong or someone's sort of said something or someone does something at another meetup that you think would be good here, between now and the end of this year or January is the time to bring that up. I tend to create these slides, ahead of time, and things sort of, as the year rolls on, everything gets really busy, so it's hard to change things as we go. But if we can kind of think about it now's the time. Looking for volunteers. It's hard to kind of codify all the elements that go into this organizing CocoaHeads, but we're looking for some volunteers to help, and we're also looking for sponsors. But the sponsors is the third on the list for a reason. It's not as important as the other two. Volunteer opportunities for CocoaHeads are things like community coordination. That's organizing meetup.com. That's organizing the blog. That's just sort of general outreach and community coordination. Speaker coordination, getting people who say they're interested to speak, following them up, organizing their topic, getting all those sort of things organized. Sponsorship coordination, that involves hitting up sponsors, following up kind of payments, and sort of just generally reaching out in that way. Both speaker and sponsorships are both kind of reach out roles. Logistics coordination, it may depend on the future venue that we land at, but delivering the drinks or getting them delivered, delivering all the food or getting that delivered, getting all this equipment around as we go. Hack night coordination, I think I've got another slide on that, but I'd like to codify hack night a bit further next year and maybe get, say, someone like an REA or someone with a big office that'll let us come in and do a proper hack night every month. That involves coordination as well. Video and live streaming, that's something that I've been doing the last couple of years at varying levels of success, but I think I've kind of finally got that worked out. Social media, Twitter, emails, all that stuff. I do it sporadically when someone reminds me. I've got heaps of ideas for CocoaHeads, so this is not due to a lack of ideas. Formalising a hack night, as I just said, could be a good way to reach out to new members, encourage new members. Creating a drinks night, that's sort of, another, we had an NS breakfast, why don't we add a drinks night, which is basically the CocoaHeads current hack night, Luke. Annual sponsorships instead of monthly sponsorships. Getting 11 sponsors or 11 different sponsors has an overhead to it. Maybe we take that to an annual model. Different food, we've had the pizza for 10 years. I've had a lot of feedback on that saying, well, I don't eat pizza, I don't like pizza. That's fair enough. If your family runs a food delivery business of some description, that can be your contribution. Obviously, we pay for it, but do we need to introduce a code of conduct? A lot of meetups have that, a lot of groups have that. We don't. Sydney has one. I feel like we're behind in that regard. We also haven't. Again, contentious, there's a lot of that, but all these things go through my mind. Name tags. I went to Ruby Group the other week and they do name tags. I'm like, it doesn't help tonight because I know everyone, but as they grow, you print name tags for everyone as people walk in. I reckon that's a really interesting idea, but someone's got to coordinate that. So, what I've proposed and run past a few people is, in place of our November meetup, we'll run, and thanks to Sean, I'm just going to name you today, we're going to run a small meeting at your office on the 9th of November, open to everyone, but it will be capped at a number. To sit, I'll put together an agenda, we'll sit and we'll talk about CocoaHeads 2018. That involves sort of ideas, feedback, dividing responsibilities. And November is more than enough time to kind of collaborate after the fact. So that's how to sort of take up some of these ideas and some of these volunteer opportunities. I've got a blog post that I'm going to share over the next couple of months, and I'm going to reach out to a lot of people, but it's because the website is written in PHP and it's very easy to iterate on. It's CocoaHeads/2018. There's no link shortening in there. That's actually just a route hard-coded into the website. So melbournecocoaheads.com/2018. I'll be referencing that a lot. I spend a lot of time kind of thinking about it. And tonight's a great opportunity to also give feedback if it's on your mind, if I've made anything sort of come to the top of your thinking. Without further me talking, I'm going to jump straight into the month or the yesterday morning that was. Not to put a name to your presentation, Gavin, but Gavin, if you wanted to come up and kickstart the next thing. Oh, well, actually, before that, was there any questions on my rant? Did anyone have any questions? I moved through it really quickly. Stu, I know you couldn't read it from back there.
You said something about the venue. I think I've probably missed it. Are we potentially changing venues?
Everything's open for discussion. There's no intrinsic problem with this has been a great venue. It's just more like everything's open for discussion. Outware have been great. They've committed the whole year to us here. But again, if we want to come back here, we need to have that discussion. We should talk about it. All right. Any other questions? I'll just jump slides. Not new. Open existing. TMTW. TMTW. Open.
Interesting.
All right. So you can use that if you want, yes, optional.
Please. That'd be great. Oh, so it's all good now?
Yep.
All right, sweet. Pocket. Sweet. Welcome everyone, CocoaHeads number 109. For those of you unfamiliar with CocoaHeads, at the start, a person like me gets a chance to talk about a brief summary of what's happened in the last month. We often call it the month that was, or TMTW. I'll have to constantly look at this thing to make sure I'm pressing the right button. And at the start, a person like me gets to talk a bit about what happened. And I compiled a list of things that I thought were pretty interesting from this last month, and I'd like to start with macOS and iOS betas. They happened a lot. We started from the 14th of August last month, which was when last CocoaHeads was. There were macOS and iOS betas. Can I get a show of hands actually from the back? Who can't see what I wrote on the screen over here? Is everything all right back there? Sweet, awesome. I also found out that in iOS 11, Apple's introduced a new feature, Emergency SOS, that lets you turn off Touch ID of all different things in the case of an emergency. As well as that, AirPods had their shipping times reduced. They started at 6 weeks from a while ago. They reduced to 4 to 3 weeks. And more recently, I think in the last week or so, if anybody knows the exact timing, you'll have to correct me, that in the last week they reduced it to 1 to 2 weeks. I mean, I've always been under the impression that if I walked into JB Hi-Fi, there was always 1 or 2 stores that would always have the AirPods there. So if anybody here is still looking for AirPods, local JB Hi-Fis, the one on Elizabeth Street, perfect. All right, as well as that, AccuWeather for iOS. Who has already heard of this story before, AccuWeather for iOS? Can I get a show of hands? AccuWeather for iOS? Yes, like Jesse said. Even after having turned off the location sharing, apparently they were selling user location data to money-making services out there, just selling users data for stuff. Pretty bad stuff, pretty privacy-breaking stuff.
The response was bullshit.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. They didn't have a really good explanation for it. Explanation for selling users' data. It's just the way that they handled the entire situation. I think could have gone a lot better.
I also wonder whether Sean had an interesting day that day because their SDK was Reveal, right?
Oh, yeah.
SDK was called Reveal. SDK is the same name as our tool, Reveal. I had multiple people contact me saying, "Oh, you should announce something that's not the same." It's like it will blow over within 3 days. Nobody will remember.
Oh no.
I don't think we had any issues.
Yeah, did that affect anything at all over at Itty Bitty?
No, sales commented, but apart from that, it was
Actually.
it did.
All right.
He's been doing that for years.
And in other higher level news, Apple won their second technology/engineering Emmy for Siri on the Apple TV. I didn't know such things existed. Does anyone here have anything that they can tell us about that explains this Emmy award at all? I mean, I'm not too informed.
Both the Emmy, both the organisation that grants Emmys and the Oscars do technical awards every year.
Ah,
We used to have multiple Oscar-winning members of the iOS community in Melbourne for technical Oscars.
cool.
So that's never announced part of the TV show.
So it's usually done the night before.
Yeah.
Ah, right.
That's on the web and people get their awards.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, for those streaming, it's just that the technical Emmys aren't shown on TV or anything like that. And we have a couple of award winners in Melbourne, do we? Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. I had no idea.
I haven't seen Alan for a while.
Yeah, something else, and this one's a number actually, this next point of mine. In this last quarter, almost 50% of all smartwatches sold were Apple Watches. I mean, who knew? Yeah, great stuff to know. As well as that, this is actually something that I figure will be pretty good leading forward. That Siri has moved from Eddie Q to Craig Federighi. And I'm just thinking, actually, and I'd like this to be an open question. I always thought it was a bit funny that Siri, being voice synthesis and voice recognition and that sort of stuff, I always found that to be a bit of an oddball under Eddie Q's leadership. That is, services, I believe, that he was looking after. Is that right? Anybody correct me, please? Yep.
App Store?
Yeah, App Store and stuff. That sort of stuff was under his leadership. I always found it a bit weird that Siri was under his leadership and not somebody else's, like Craig Federighi's, who was leading software engineering. So when I heard this, I thought, oh, you know what? There'll be probably some really good advancements. And I read an article recently that had a few voice excerpts of how voice synthesis was happening on iOS 9, They had an excerpt from iOS 10 and one from iOS 11, and it's pretty darn awesome how much it has evolved from iOS 9 through to iOS 11. It sounds relatively natural when you listen to the robotic voice of what iOS 9 Siri was like. And in other news, Apple ended their iTunes Music Festival. Not that that really affected us here in Melbourne in particular. I believe it was held in London every year. Yes, and Spotify started one. It was announced at about the same time. It broke my heart just a little bit because I don't quite understand how it must affect them as a company, but Apple always said that music was at the core of their business, the iPod, iTunes, and stuff like that. So to hear that they'd shut off the iTunes Music Festival, and the last one was last year, it kind of broke my heart just a little bit, and almost for them, not so much for me personally. And of course, we had more betas, lots more betas. I know that in the last month or so, we had more betas for iOS and macOS than we'd had for many of the previous ones. That is, iOS 11 had more betas more recently than iOS 10 betas last year, iOS 9 betas the year before, and stuff like that. I know that this last month was a pretty good month for products. It was all right, I think. Can I get a show of hands who thought that this month was an all right month for products? Yeah? That's only half the room. That's only half the room. Yeah, less than half the room. Who here is excited for the products? Come on, people. All right. Because, you know. Yeah, I mean, I guess I did hear that Beats came out with new earphones, the W1 chip. I mean, that's pretty cool. And, you know, these laptops, do people recognize these laptops and this laptop and this phone? No? No? Okay, in all seriousness, Beats headphones, W1 chip, be able to pair with your iPhone, just like anything else. That's the Xiaomi laptop over there and the Xiaomi phone over here that they announced the day before Apple's keynote. It's not Apple, it doesn't matter. Well, yes, I understand that, I suppose, and I guess we're here to talk about the Apple products that came out on September the 12th. Let's see. I think they started with the Apple Watch. You have to correct me if I'm wrong. And a lot of things came out with the Apple Watch. I made a short list over here of what I thought I'd really like. It's cellular now. They have Siri talking. And of course, we get new sports bands. Is there anything? Yes, yes. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add for Apple Watch? I mean, I found it pretty exciting in comparison to what Series 2 was like. Sorry, I'll move out of the way for those people. Yeah, the software SIM card. What is it? I'm actually pretty excited to just leave my phone, not really at home, but I guess at my desk or wherever. I'm thinking it'll allow me to, break away from my desk a bit more. Yeah.
Rumors are that battery life is pretty terrible if you have constant LTE.
Yeah. That comment there was just that if you're constantly using the LTE, the battery life is apparently pretty terrible. I'm hoping it's not. Hoping it's not. I mean, it's obviously going to be, but yeah. Sorry, it's got a red button. It accounts for everything. I'll take the red button. Yeah. They also announced the Apple TV 4K. Who's excited for the Apple TV 4K? Oh, actually, that's a pretty good number of hands. No, there was two. Matt also raised his hand up the back there. We got a couple of hands, and if I was in the audience, I'd also raise my hands, just because, I'm sort of excited for the Apple TV 4K too. I recently bought an Apple TV 4th Gen, the 1080p one, and that one's all right. Now that with this one, they've released a new Siri remote with the white circle around the menu button, I'm all over this Apple TV 4K. I really want that Siri remote with the white circle around it. In all seriousness, though, at their event, they demoed this game. Has everyone here seen Sky, the demo of Sky? Oh, no? Well, make sure to have a look at it. It's a new game that's going to come out soon. I won't advocate for them because I don't know too much about the game, but it's apparently just a really nice looking game. You can play it with the Siri remote. It'll be available on iOS and iPad, coming out whenever Apple TV comes out, I suppose. Let's see. Yeah. Other than that, there are a few of the technical specs. They talk about they have gigabit Ethernet in the thing now. They only used to have 10 to 100 megabit Ethernet. And what came after the Apple TV 4K was not the Apple phone, unfortunately, like all of the other products these days, but the iPhone. And they talked about the iPhone 8 first, and it was a pretty good launch. I sat there watching them announce this thing first, and I thought, oh, you know, they're going to do this thing where they release the iPhone 7, then just like they did with the iPhone 7, then the iPhone 7 Plus. It's great. It's great. They talked about the iPhone 8. They talked about all these amazing features in the iPhone 8. That says A11 Bionic, by the way. That doesn't say all Bionic. Sorry, it does look like an L, I understand. It now has True Tone display, which is going to be pretty cool. I mean, this last year, in all seriousness, this last year, there have been a couple of times when I used my iPhone next to my iPad. It's the 9.7 that has a True Tone display, and I think this one, I can see how this one looks a bit nicer, you know, in this lighting. Has anybody used a True Tone display iPad or anything like that before? Show of hands real quick. Yeah, I mean, use that next to your iPhone, and you know, soon with the iPhone 8 won't be too bad. Essentially, it makes the colors look a lot nicer. Portrait lighting, that's pretty cool. Somebody at work recently was talking about the iPhone's new portrait lighting and how it's machine-learned lighting. That's pretty crazy. In all seriousness, though, with the A11 Bionic chip, what is it? 600 billion something rather. Help me out here. 600 billion what, sorry? Yeah, something. It was something. It was 600 billion like computations or something rather that had to do with their neural engine now inside the A11 chip. And in all seriousness, that's pretty freaking crazy. I don't know what they're going to use it for, but portrait lighting and the way that the mask moved with Craig Federighi's face, that was pretty intense. So I'm looking forward to the AR kit development in this coming year. And funnily enough, it's also what we're going to be talking about next month. Yeah. Wait, no, sorry. Had you already mentioned that, Jesse? Okay, sweet, cool. Sorry, I was hoping I didn't spoil anything. But otherwise, it's also in an all-new design, glass back, the open standard Qi wireless charging, all of that stuff. So that's all great stuff. But I know that everyone was going after the iPhone 10. All right, sweet. So who calls it the iPhone X? Get out. You're obviously outnumbered in this room.
I see it as iPhone X.
Do you? Yeah.
You call it Mac OS 10 or Mac OS X?
I call it Mac OS X in my case.
Jesse says Mac OS X for those who are watching the stream.
Jesse's meaning is iPhone X.
Jay.
I see it, my mind reads it like that. I say 10,
Uh-huh.
but my mind reads it X.
I see.
Part of the problem would be that everyone knows Roman numerals as well. So if you don't know Roman numerals, you don't know that X stands for 10.
The comment there was that people don't know Roman numerals. No, but seriously. No, sorry, I was clarifying for the people who might not be able to hear you up the back. So you're saying that next year they release the iPhone, it'll be iPhone B for 11? Maybe. Would it? Would it be? Okay.
Why can't it be iPhone 9?
Because
Code to look for iPhone 95 in the code.
No. Someone said this to me recently, and it's an old joke that I remember hearing when I was in primary school. But the reason why they don't have 9 is because 7, 8, 9, and so 9 doesn't exist anymore. Oh no, not that joke. Sorry, was that a German joke?
They never had an iPhone 1, did they? The iPhone 2G?
iPhone 1, 2G.
iPhone 1 was implicitly iPhone 1.
Yeah, but what was iPhone 2?
The marketing name was just iPhone.
That's what 3G was.
Yeah.
The original iPhone to the 3G.
Went from the original iPhone to 3G. Yeah, I guess in a sense that makes the iPhone 4 the only real iPhone 4. The others are fakes, and then here we have the iPhone not 10 but X, I guess. And it came with all of this amazing stuff. Oh wait, sorry, no. This is a comment I had heard just today. It's pretty much the same as the other one. There's glass in the front, there's glass in the back. It's about the same. You get wireless charging. It's great. But no, it does have a lot of pretty awesome stuff. The portrait stuff that we were talking about, how it can make the background black and all that stuff. Now, what I'm really excited about though, and you know, it's not technically awesome, but this OLED display. I've been watching shows on, we have an OLED TV, me and my flatmates, and I was watching the keynote, and the background was completely black. Maybe it was the Steve Jobs Theater in comparison to what it was like at WWDC. But after watching things on an OLED display, coming back to my iPhone's LCD display, it was okay. Pretty bad, but it was okay. So before I talk anymore, who here is thinking of getting an iPhone 10X, 10 or X? Yeah? Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good number of people. That's cool. But otherwise, yeah, there's the Animoji, which is pretty cool. The Super Retina display, that stuff's really awesome.
Super Retina is like the worst name before.
I was Super Retina. Yeah, I was hoping to hide that just by saying that it's awesome and skip over it because, yeah, admittedly, when I heard Super Retina display, I thought, Retina display, Retina HD display, Super Retina display, Retina display. Yeah, I mean,
What's the
yeah.
charging mat called? Is that that's the worst name?
Air
That's the
power.
Worst
Power.
name ever.
Yes. But I've noticed there's
I heard people tweeting they should have called it apple juice.
Apple juice. In a little more seriousness though, you'll notice that everything wireless of theirs is Air something, like AirPods. Everything not so wireless is Apple, like Apple Watch, I guess, and stuff. So eventually they'll release a table that you can put your iMac on, no need for a cable, Apple table. They'll release the mat, Apple mat, and then there'll be a connector that you can connect your, or rather put your iPhone stuff on, and they'll call that Apple Juice, because you can just charge your stuff on top. So wired stuff and wireless stuff, all that sort of stuff came out in the keynote. The key things for me to take away from the keynote were these things: iPhone 8, Apple TV 4K, Apple Watch, pre-ordering this Friday, September the 15th, 5:01 p.m. Everyone get on your laptops. It's going to be released next week. The difference is, though, because it's after daylight savings, and I'm glad that Dexet made the iPhone 8, etc. in small text, because bang, iPhone 10, big text, pre-ordering October the 27th. Keep in mind, everyone, it's 6:01 p.m., not 5:01, because it's after daylight savings. Yes, watch out for that, watch out for that.
And if anyone wants to get me a birthday present, the iPhone 10.
The
X. 10.
this is gonna be a good year. So I wanted to talk briefly about this. I think people know what I'm going to talk about when I talk about this. Good one, Prasad. No, I'm not going to talk about Melbourne. I'm talking about the notch and software development now with the notch. It's only been two days since this is official. The iPhone has officially had a notch. And people are talking about how they'll dev now with the notch, etc., and how with the safe area insets and whatnot from WWDC and all of the recommendations from there, it's coming back to bite us in the back. Bite us in the back. I was thinking, recently I saw on Twitter, people have done a few, I don't know if they're just raw design templates or whatnot. They've had the notch on the left with a table view and the rows jump around the notch. Have people seen that?
I think it's a joke.
Is it just a joke? Because I'd like to see that. I really would. And on the other side, similarly, if you have the table view or the other way around. Yes, the scroll bar. That looks pretty neat. Not that I'd buy an app that looks like that, but it's a fancy idea.
What actually happened in real life?
What actually happened in real life?
Like if you make a landscape, what happens to how do you scroll bar?
Oh, does anybody know? Has anybody tried out the simulator?
There's content safe areas that you need to keep your content in.
Yeah.
The table views, I think the background of the cell extends all the way over by default.
Oh, really?
It's going to break off.
It's going to break stuff at the very least,
So
yeah.
you've got to buy one to test.
And then keep it, I guess.
Is that what you're hearing a lot of?
Actually,
But yeah, no, actually, what is it? About that notch, Apple posted a bunch of a handful of educational videos about updating your apps and stuff to support iPhone 10, to go work with their new design guidelines and whatnot. And it's available at this link. It's developer.apple.com, videos play fall 2017. And thanks to my co-worker, my colleague Satya over here, Satya, yes, thanks to Satya over here for putting it on the company Slack so that I don't have to search the internet like a madman for this link. Again, the link looks like this. Coincidentally enough, speaking of development, speaking of working to cater for the iPhone 10, to develop our apps for iPhone 10, we have a talk tonight about that by Ben over here. He's tweeting on his phone, Ben. Yeah. Oh, it's also in there. All right, so WWDC also available. The video is also available on there, is it?
From the app, yes.
All right, sweet. Okay, so yeah, this link, that app, as well as the talk on iPhone 10, thinking about how we might be good citizens working with Apple's frameworks and whatnot for iPhone 10. We have a couple of interesting talks tonight. I think, actually, no, I take that back. It was just the one. Is it, Jesse? Just the one talk other than Ben's? Yeah, just the one talk. So, yeah, so we have a couple of interesting talks tonight about automation and about tools. So I won't take too much more of your time. Yeah, now I'll hand it back to Jesse. And that was the month. That was the month of September. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoy Melbourne CocoaHeads 109. All right.
Stu, did you want to jump up and do your unpreparedness? Yes. Now's a good time to grab a refresh. We'll be back in a second.
Was that too long?
Say something stupid.
Am I all good?
Bok's scared.
What's that?
Bok is scared because he's not saying anything.
Bok is scared. Is he online? Hey, Bok.
We've got a couple of people watching. He's in Singapore.
Oh, nice. iOS streaming to Singapore.
I don't know why he's called Bok.
No idea. I don't have a really loud, like, farmer's whistle. That's what we need now.
I can't flip whistle. I used to be able to do it. I lost the ability. I used to call the dog. She's like, so she jumped at me.
Do you want to yell because we've got a microphone? Did Jesse run away somewhere important?
Alright, let's make a start. I'm not sure where Jesse went.
So you got to get to dinner, mate. If Jesse was going to do something important, we're going to start without him. So the theme of this month, I think, is like automation and testing or something like that. Like automate stuff you can do to speed up your dev process. I think some of the people that were going to speak pulled out. So at 5:30 today, I just looked at the open tabs I had and thought there's a couple of things there that everyone would have a bunch of little things they do every day that make their development quicker. So I'm really interested to hear what your things are as well. I just thought I'd quickly demo the couple of things I had open at 5:30 today. And it doesn't take long to set them up because I started at 5:30 and I can't remember what time I got here, but 6:45 or something. So it didn't take too long. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was...
Why do you have Visual Studio open?
It's Visual Studio Code. It's written in JavaScript. It's fine. So actually, it's like Adam, but it's not a complete dog's breakfast of everyone doing their own thing. So someone told me to try it. They were a JavaScript developer. I was skeptical, and it's actually not terrible.
World's changing.
Yeah, I know.
Get with the program.
So, three things I wanted to cover. One was a really simple feature toggle mechanism. Second was a little script I use to make sure the Xcode project file is kept in order. And the third one is a really simple way of contract testing your API using Swagger, which follows on nicely. I think Jesse last month, the month before, gave something on using Swagger to define API contracts. So yeah, these are just a few things I was doing. So we try and use feature toggles heavily on the app that we work on. We've got 7 developers contributing constantly to the app, and you get horrible merge conflicts. So we try and merge all the time, and if work is in progress, we just try and hide that functionality until it's ready to display. So just imagine we have a really simple app that just has... It's not Xcode 9 purely because that's not what I had open when I decided to put this together.
I was going to ask you to enlarge it. You can't do that in Xcode 8.
It's already large. Here's one I prepared earlier. Oh!
There's a seat at the front for you, man.
Yeah. So, just imagine this is an awesome demo app, and we just have an unfinished feature. So often when you're working on a chunky feature, it's really nice if there's a single entry point to it. So we might have this unfinished feature that does something. It's not finished yet. We won't all see it while we're developing it, but if we push out builds to our stakeholders, we don't necessarily want them coming up and asking questions why this is broken, why it's not finished. It just saves a whole lot of effort, and it means that we can merge really often. So I want to merge this in, but the feature's not there. So we might say something like, we want to hide the button if yeah, if we're not in debug mode, then we might want to hide it. So we might say something like should show the thing. The thing is called do your thing because I was listening to James Brown on my headphones while I was writing this, and so we might say this is. We'll just set that to the toggle. We set it as a variable because we use dependency injection to actually test it. So because it's good to even test your view controllers. So we might just say the button.isHidden. We'll say it this, the should show you thing enabled, and because you do hidden not visible like every other language, you have to put a not in there. It's a bit confusing. So now, so glad I'm using my MacBook Pro. I've got a little MacBook I use for writing code on the train, and I get 3 goes at compiling the app on my whole train trip home. It takes so long. So I'm going to replace it with an iPad because it's got faster chips now. So we still see it, but if we run it in release mode, hopefully it'll be gone. But you know how live demos go. All right, so we can all dev on it, all the other people can see it, we can collaborate on it, we can merge it in, but if we push out a build to our stakeholders, it's hidden. Sometimes you want to do that, you want to fetch them remotely from the API, but often just having toggles compiled into your app is completely fine, and it's really low overhead. So that's how we use the toggles. In terms of how they're defined, it's really simple. We basically say, so our set of toggles is basically just, we create a toggle and we just say which types of builds it's enabled for. So we've got our builds matched to like build configurations in Xcode, but you could define it however you want. And we just have an array of it. So if we want to say, actually we want this in release as well, we could just set that, and then it'll be enabled even in our release builds. And once things are enabled everywhere and you're pushing it out to all your stakeholders and you're happy with the feature, delete the toggle. It's a real nightmare if you just let this build out to hundreds of things. There you go. So now it's even in the release builds. So, yeah.
Is that sort of debug, comma, release and option set?
Interestingly, I thought I would be a really clever Swift developer and do it as an option set. And I spent about half a day on it and realized it could have been like 2 minutes of not clever Swift.
So it's an array of things.
It's just an array of build configs. So you could do it with if-defs, but they're really hard to test. So don't riddle your code with that. So we basically have a single place where we say, these are the types of things we want to toggle on. As I said, we're using build configs, you could use anything else. And so we have debug and release. In fact, in our production app, we have a number of these. We have kind of a dev build, we have a QA build, and some other things. And we set API environments, other things based on that. And so this is the one place in our code where we use the if-def, just to define what the active build configuration is at compile time. But everything else just depends on that. So, and then our toggle code is literally just saying if the active build configuration is one of the ones we've enabled it for, that's really just an array contains. So we basically look at that array, the debug, comma, release, whatever, and we just say if our current build config is in that array, then it's enabled, otherwise it's not. And it conforms to a protocol because we use fake ones that we inject for testing. So if we want to test this thing, we'll say, let's create our storyboard. And then I don't like using like implicit optional unloading, whatever, unwrapping, except in tests. If your tests crash, like just fix it. It's fine. So, and I don't have Apple's clever snippets tool, so I just put this stuff down here. Yeah, so I basically say, the reason we put it as a property was so we can set it in the test. So we can just say, when it's toggled off, then it should hide what we're doing, and when it's toggled on, we should do it. Obviously in production, there's slightly different ones. Did I call it something else? There you go. There you go. This is what happens when you sometimes listen to James Brown and sometimes you're just a bogan Aussie. Here? No, somewhere else.
There was another in the same file before.
There you go.
You could have used a
So I heard a guy at Yao last year talk about mob programming. I guess this is like extreme mob programming. We could write a book and become agile thought leaders. There you go. So that works. So I'm a fan of testing view controllers, and I'm a fan if you're going to introduce build like feature flags of actually testing the different permutations, because otherwise it's really easy to like it works for me and then you push it out to people and it's broken. So yeah, that's really basic feature toggles. It's literally, 3 lines of code there, maybe 10 lines of code there, 10 lines of code there, and you're done. And so we have maybe 10 of these things in our code base at any one time, in just static defs there, and once they're pushed out and they're released, we delete them.
I'll ask you a question while you're a fan of testing view control.
I'm a fan of being able to write code and push out an app and being confident that it's not broken. So that's one way of gaining that confidence. We don't have automated UI tests on my project at the moment, and we don't have a QA. So that's a good trade-off for us. It may be different in different environments. And we also kind of practice continuous delivery as much as you can in the iOS space, in that we push out builds to our stakeholders for every single commit that merges in. So, yeah, as they get more complicated, the trade-off might be different. And also, if your view controllers are really lean and you've extracted all your logic, there may be limited value in it as well. So,
Since you've opened the can of worms around testing view controllers,
that wasn't the intention of this talk.
what's the tough part? So, how do you get around problems such as initializing your view controller without a whole heap of boilerplate and switching from a production or a staging environment across to a test environment? I know.
There is some boilerplate involved in setting it up, but not many. Like if we have a view controller that you're injecting 10 dependencies into, it's probably a smell that we could actually abstract smaller concepts within that. So actually test driving them it makes you feel pain when things get more complicated. So I think that's not a terrible thing.
And to that point, actually, just make my brain think of it. Like, John Sunder, I don't know, I can't remember now. There's a blog post who recently went to relive the diff IoT with the using factories to help avoid parcel dependency between people.
Yeah. And with default parameters, it's also quite, like we do a lot of things where we inject all our dependencies, but they have default parameters. So our code at runtime, the actual production code, is kind of just creating objects, and you're not having to inject a lot of things. It's like poor man's dependency injection, but it's better than 1,000 lines of XML, which is what we have in our Java code bases. 1,000 lines, that's probably really...
Just one more thing, I think you did mention that, but just again, you're using vars, which is basically compiled code. What is the advantage of using compiled code versus using the hash ifs?
So basically what I did here, so if you had, in the view controller, if we did if debug, hash if debug, whatever, then we couldn't do this test. So we would actually have to run the app in multiple configurations to know that we'd wired it up right. And I could go a whole day without actually running the app in the simulator, just running the tests. And that's, if I can do that and push it and still be confident that the app works, that's a win. Sometimes I do that and it's completely broken and I think I really should have run the app. But that's a goal of mine, just because it's so much quicker.
To go further on that topic of why not to use if-this, the problem with if-this is that you're introducing a matrix of compile time variables. So the more if-this you introduce into your application, the more potential the matrix gets exponentially larger. And so you end up you'll have a refactor of some code because there was still a code path that's in the else condition that's not normally compiled, but you dismiss it.
Yeah.
You want to avoid preprocessor if conditions.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So the things in those if-def, if it's in the else, like if you look at the build config thing, so this is the only line actually getting compiled at the moment. This one isn't. So if we make this something else, the app will still, Okay. In Objective-C it didn't. Is that?
It's working things a little different because it actually has to be syntactically valid.
Oh, right.
But
Doesn't have to be functional.
it doesn't have to be functional.
Yeah, right.
In C compilers, it doesn't even have to be syntactically valid.
Yeah. In terms of compiling them in, that's really just a trade-off. So we have a mechanism for doing remote feature toggles as well, but because our app's not in production yet, it's a bit more overhead to manage remote feature toggles, so we don't have a need for it yet. We're doing a lot of like just-in-time architecture, so until we need it, we won't do it. So these kind of 20 lines of code satisfies our need now. Once you're in production with 1 million users, it's a different trade-off, and you have to maintain the toggles in a different way. Anyway, that's the first thing I want to look at. The second one was, does everyone use xcconfigs for managing their build variables? Yep, cool. The less stuff in the project file, the better, because it's horrible to maintain. So,
If you're not using xcconfigs, you should.
yeah, really simple to set up. Like, so I basically have this shell script that passed. It just didn't output anything. That's a hacky shell script that I wrote about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's
We use that at REA.
yeah, and it still works. It basically greps the project file for build settings and does it. But I actually decided if a bash script gets longer than about 3 lines of code, I spend so much time Googling the syntax that it's quicker to write it in Ruby. And then you just have the one-off cost of setting up all your Ruby dependencies, which can take days on a Mac. And then you realize that, and speaking of automation, Xcode build has this one bit where it does the export options plist and does that kind of stuff, which has got really good in Xcode 9. It shells out to a Ruby script that relies on system Ruby and system gems that are defaulted on your system. And
Does it still do that?
I did in Xcode 7 and 8. I haven't checked on 9. And I went through it with in the testing lab at DubDub in 2015, and I think the engineer's comment was, effing Ruby. Anyway, so the main thing is we want to extract everything to xcconfigs, but Xcode loves to add settings into here automatically, and you don't realize it. And some people don't look at their commits before they push it to Git. I don't know why. It's a weird psychological behavior that some developers seem to have. So instead of constantly being passive aggressive, we'll just say here's a script that tells you no. So you can run this shell script and it says no. But it was really hard to work out what it was. I'm not very good with shell stuff. So the Ruby one will hopefully tell us what it was. There you go. It says for the configuration debug, we set the target device family. We accidentally switched off iPad support for that. So just to get an idea of what those scripts are, this is the hacky shell script I wrote 7 years ago. Amazingly, it still works, but it's literally grepping the project file. So if they change it, it's going to break. So I outsourced that responsibility to Ruby and the Xcode project gem. It's more code, but it's easier to understand.
I did the same thing recently, and then Hugo before he complained that it was too damn slow, but put the grip back in.
I mean, this is a very simple project, so maybe you're right.
No, I think the problem I had is that instead of using rate, which is much faster than startup, we built a Fastlane action to it. And
Fastlane is slow.
much slower.
Yeah.
And so it was taking a second to run that script, so every build would pause for a couple seconds just to check it.
Is it booting up a web browser as well? Booting up a web browser to scrape the...
Yeah.
Yeah, it sends all of your source code to Google. You know that.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
But in the evil, you want to do is
So anyway, if you do use xcconfigs and you get frustrated with trying to control where your settings are being done and the state of your project file, it's really easy just to have a script that does it to enforce it. This is more code than the shell script, but it's easier to understand if you like Ruby. I think Ruby is a really nice language to read, but if you don't know it, you might not agree. I heard the comment that actually Ruby prioritizes the beautiful nature of the language at the expense of everything else you'd want in a programming language. Which is probably true, but people still manage to write software in it. People write software in JavaScript. So, speaking of JavaScript, okay, so that's the second thing. The writing little scripts like that. I'm sure you've all got a bunch of them in your project. It'd probably be really useful to share them all, and we could all benefit. You might.
Obviously Spotify don't give enough shit to it. But he's written a tooling, like a scripting sort of tooling system around Swift. So if you want to write your tools in Swift, you can use Graph. And that sort of simplifies a bunch of things like dependency management for Swift. So it's yet another dependency management tool. You can do things like have your scripts say require a GitHub repo. So if you're depending on someone else's utility code for your scripting, you can actually download that, build it, and stash it somewhere. I haven't played with it before. I wonder if anyone else has.
Yeah, nice. I do like the idea of having a simpler tool chain.
Doesn't package manager do that for you?
Swift Package Manager? Probably. It may be built on top of that, but I think I haven't heard of it.
Having that would be great because
So, looking quickly at the README, it's not like, well, it depends on SPM, so the Swift Package Manager.
Yeah.
So, all of your dependencies would need to be dependent on that. Whereas most things you can still easily build in CocoaPods or Carthage. Probably definitely worth looking at if you get completely and utterly frustrated with Fastlane, particularly now that it's owned by Google.
Yeah, from a speed perspective, it might be. If you're running complicated things and Ruby and that would be as well.
yeah, if it was simple, it would be great. So this demo project that took me an hour to make is using. So I used Homebrew to install Cherubi and some other things. Then I used Ruby gems to install like CocoaPods and Xcode project, and then I used the NVM to install Node, which installed like some JavaScript dependencies for running my contract tests. So like yay being a polyglot developer and you constantly just managing dependencies. I pip installed the AWS CLI, but I didn't need it for this project. I don't know why that is, but anyway. So the other thing we want to do is, I had some contract tests up and running. I'm a big fan. There's a local tool called Pact, which I've written in Melbourne, that's quite advanced contract testing between systems. But it can be a little bit hard to get up and running and a little bit expensive to maintain. So until you have advanced service interactions, and if you're already providing documentation in Swagger, you might be able to get away with it. So I just created a little mocky endpoint. Let's see. Oh yeah, let's do that. So I've got this endpoint. Let's curl that. So it just returns. Are you blocking my internet?
No, that should be good.
Oh, I'm blocking it. Another awesome tool. If anyone who works remotely and doesn't use trip mode, it's awesome. So when you tether, it automatically works out your tethering to like a 4G connection and blocks everything from using the internet unless you say it's okay. So when your designers dump like gigabytes of stuff in Dropbox, you don't blow your data plan. So it must have detected that I'm connected to a phone. So I'm just going to turn it off and
Just go to
sync Dropbox, yeah. So we'll curl that, and it just returns us a really simple JSON blob.
It is syncing Dropbox.
It is? Don't worry. I discovered a little tool called HTTP, not the protocol, a tool, which is kind of like curl, but you don't have to remember all the syntax, and it prints out nicer output. So if you do a lot of stuff on the command line to muck around with APIs, this little HTTP, brew install HTTP, or HTTP IE or something.
Yeah, the HTTP IE Python tool.
Yeah, yep. I could have pip installed it probably then. So that's all it returns is just that little JSON blob. It's just a message description title. And so in our Swagger, we basically just define the endpoints for our API. So we just say we get, and it's got a schema, which is an object. It requires the message key to be there, and then it requires a message to satisfy a certain thing. I won't go through all the Swagger stuff. I've had a few talks on Swagger. And then you can give like different object definitions. So this is the schema for a message. It's a JSON object. It requires a title and a description. And then the title is a string, description is a string. So then we can say npm run contract. It's like Ruby gems, but it changes even more often. Sometimes people remove stuff and the whole world breaks. So it's using a tool called Dread. I think it's available in other languages, but I've only used it in JavaScript. It basically just grabs your Swagger contract, you can run it against an API, and it validates the contract against it. So, not, yeah. So it's not nearly as powerful as something like Pact if you're doing proper contract testing, but in terms of just a bit of assurance of like, this is what I expect, or does my API actually validate the documentation that I wrote for it? That's pretty cool. And so if you want to see how, the one thing that's, well, there's lots of things that are crap about it, but one thing that's crap about it is it doesn't give great error messages if it doesn't match. So if we accidentally return something's not, we said the title and description are strings. If we return a number, for example, you'd think that'd never happen, but sometimes people are working on an API and they're like, oh, the ID is always a number. Why do we return it as a string? And they just change it. So if it returns the wrong type, it goes, hey, it didn't match, and here's like a whole bunch of errors.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a sledgehammer. It says like pass or fail. It does go through here and say, look,
You've got to read it.
at message description, invalid type, number, expected string. So the good error message is in there. You just got to look for it.
What's the tool called again?
It's called Dread.
Dread.
DREDD. So yeah, under the hood, these npm tasks are literally just running Dread, the YAML file of our thing, and then the endpoint that we're running against.
When I presented on the Swagger contract stuff that generated your API, your local client, at the same time I was also using Dread to test the API. Like, so we'd have integration tests that use on one side the iOS client was generated by it, on the other side we're using Dread. Dread hit the limits of the Swagger specs so quickly.
Yeah.
It comes back as an int or a string, and it gives you 7 pages of documentation when there's an error.
Yeah.
So
it's better to know something's broken than not, but you also want to be able to resolve it quickly.
But it also doesn't support. Yeah, I found it really frustrating. It's perfect for that simple case. Perfect.
Yeah.
As soon as it gets more complicated, it's frustrating.
I agree. So if you get a missing field, you get a similar. So this endpoint basically doesn't return the description, and we said that's required. So again, massive errors, but somewhere it'll say missing required property description. So if we want to make that pass, like we could go into our contract and say, you know what, if the description is there, it needs to be a string, but if it's not there, we don't care. It's not required. So then you could run that again, and hopefully it'll pass. Yeah, that passes. So that was the second tool that I think is that you hit the limits of it, but the fact that you can get it up and running in 5 minutes is really powerful, particularly if you depend on APIs that you don't control and you don't trust the people to tell you when they make breaking changes. Yeah, and it plays in with that Swagger def. So working with Matt and some other people, he's on his phone, but some other people last year, we tried to write an API in Swagger. So the documentation was in Swagger, and then we had a bunch of examples that you can have in Swagger, and we uploaded it to API Gateway, and it made a bunch of mocks based on the examples. So it was our mock API. You can define pass-through endpoints. So we uploaded the Swagger, and it became the real API that actually ran live requests to downstream endpoints and mapped it all through. And then we used Dread to test the APIs. The API was the mocks, it was the documentation, it was the actual implementation, and it was the contract test, which sounds amazing, but it was really horrible. But
if anyone is wondering, those things constantly fail because people change stuff.
yes, the one good thing is like failing is better than not failing if something breaks, but that experiment of writing an entire API in just YAML is maybe not realistic. Anyway, that was it. There were literally 3 things I had open this afternoon. I would love to hear about the things that you had open this afternoon that help speed up your development process as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Stu? That was pretty interactive. That was really good. If not, we can jump straight into Jeff's presentation.
Just one question to sort of open up the discussion. What's the one thing you would like to see, like to actually get out of the tooling, like to see implemented, that you currently think isn't there?
they fixed mine in Xcode 9. Like actually being able to get all the export IPA options from the command line that you can do in Xcode, which you can finally do, is that's what I've wanted for years. So you can finally do it.
All right, we might jump into Jeff's presentation for people. Now's a good chance to have a refresh. We'll be back in a second. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Jet.
So the theme is automation and tooling, and there's two different things I wanted to talk about, and it's completely unrelated, both of them, with each other. First one is a small tool that I
developed for myself a few months ago and I thought could be useful to others. So I'm going to quickly show you, and then I'm going to talk about Xcode templates. So the first thing I'm going to show you is, let's say you have an, can you see anything? Not so much. Maybe that's a bit better, like this. Yeah. Okay, so you have a standard project and you need to put some app icons, and either you have a designer that cut all the right sizes for you and hopefully also have a good naming convention that makes sense, but every time it changes, it's a lot of work. And you have third-party tooling that can do that for you as well. But the few ones that I've tried, they ask you to say which sizes you want. So you kind of double up on the effort, because all the sizes you need are actually detailed here in a JSON with which device it's for, the size, and the scale. So I wanted to write a tool that would just read that JSON and cut all these assets for you. So let's try and do that. So you navigate to your project. So we're here on the desktop, the template project, whatever. And you have here some icons. No, we don't have the icons. Let's say you get the app icons from the designers, and you put them here in your project. And you use a tool that I've named Cookie, because I'm really good with names and it's kind of a cookie cutter for assets. So all you do is, if you're in the right folder in your terminal, you just ask Cookie to say, grab an icon in app icon, and you can see that the designers have a really good naming convention. App icon final v2. So you just do that, and Cookie looks for an .app icon set, realize there's 9 images, and feeds them into Xcode for you. And that's all you need to do. And now let's imagine that some business people come and say, oh, we need to support iPad and also CarPlay and Apple Watch 1 and the Mac. So you have heaps more. And then they come up with a new icon blue, final this time. And yeah, it just does it for you, all the sizes that you need. And the naming convention is based on the JSON, so it's all names that kind of make sense. iPad, how do we do that? So this one would be the 2020, and Mac 32 at 1x, Mac 32 as 2x. So it just renames and puts them all for you and put everything in the JSON. So basically, in a matter of a second, you have your 32 icons set. And that's pretty much all I have to show you. If you want to use that, it's called Cookie, with a really good README that helps you understand how to use it. What's good about that is, so Cookie is the command line tool, but the logic of reading the JSON, parsing it, understanding it, and resizing the assets, and then feeding them back into, all of that is extracted away into a framework. So if you want to build a GUI app, you could use just the framework asset resizer with a really good descriptive name. And yeah, you could build a GUI app. You could build like an iPhone app. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. Yeah, so if you're interested in that, just check asset resizer or Cookie, and you could automate your cookie cutting. That was the first part of the things I wanted to show you. That one of the tools that I've used and has saved me. I wrote that 2 months ago, and it's already saved me probably a few hours, because sometimes I just want to try different icons, and if I had to cut them all the time, that would be annoying. So now I'm going to talk about Xcode templates, completely unrelated, and I need to unmirror that. All right, so that was cookie cutter and asset resizer. And now we're going to talk about Xcode file templates. So that was supposed to be a lightning talk, and I thought there's not much to say about Xcode templates. But it's actually, there's a few interesting things, and because it's not really documented, it's a lot of tinkering and trying and changing things. So Xcode templates, that's the thing you would use if you create a new file and you go through this kind of wizard thing. Did you know you can create your own? It's as simple as creating a .exe template folder with some conditions. So first, why would you want to do that? Why do you want to create your own Xcode template? Basically, what's an Xcode template? It's just a pre-configured file. But if you want something more advanced, you could say that a Xcode template, file template, is a set of files with a little bit of configuration that you could put in it. And so you could slightly configure the boilerplate that you get. So let's see, how do you do that? How do you get started with that? That's where you start. That's the location where you start. If you want to create an Xcode file template, you need to tell Xcode where to look for Xcode templates, and that's the location where Xcode would look. And inside that file templates, you can create your own grouping, and then in your grouping, you can put as many templates as you want. So here, again, very good namings, my custom templates, and a basic template. So that's the most basic thing is, let's imagine that you're creating a lot of classes, and they are all kind of very similar, and the only thing that varies is a few names. It will create a name with, here you can see the name of the Swift source is a macro name with three underscores, and you have a plist. So that's basically the simplest anatomy of an Xcode template is a source file and a plist to describe a few things about the source file. So let's look a little bit in detail what's that. So the file base name thing.swift could be as simple. Here it's a very stupid example, but let's imagine you want to create a lot of classes, and you could obviously you could go wild in whatever you want to customize that with. And the plist, the simplest plist you can have to kickstart an Xcode template, you just need one key, which is the kind key, which explains what kind of template it is. There's project templates, there's core data templates, but I haven't played with them, so I can't really tell you more about those. Here, if you can't really read, you just say text substitution. So it means that it's just going to replace some macros, substitute text for another. So you can't really build logic like if, else, or switch stuff like kind of logic. So it's not really a code generating thing. Templates is just like, it's a bit more basic than that. You can have more keys in your plist describing what kind of types of files you want to allow the user to make. So if they change the file name and instead of .swift they put .c or .m or whatever, so you can restrict that and you can say which platforms your template is geared for. But that's not so important now. Yeah, just space it so it's a bit more readable. But this is just the basic example, so it's not that important. The result is you would see this in the template window in Xcode. You would see your custom templates groups and all of your templates underneath. If you click next, it will ask you to enter a file name and a location in a project. As you would expect, it would create a basic.swift file, create the class name. No big surprises here. So that's kind of useful if you have heaps of classes with a lot of boilerplate. But still, it feels like it's just a copy-paste level of usefulness. So you could create more than one file. Nothing restricts you to having more than one file in your template. So you could imagine that you want to create like a bunch of classes that go well together. For example, like a model, a view, and a view model, and they all need to have like the same naming convention. So that would kind of make sense. You could even go wilder and have like an heterogeneous set of files. Okay. Goodbye. Please allow me to fix that issue. That's okay, just disconnect it from.
Oh, it's you, not me.
Yeah. I don't know why.
That's you.
It's me. So you could have an heterogeneous set of files. You could have like a C header file, Swift, zip file, whatever. But still, with a basic template like this, you would go through a save dialog that asks you for a file name. But now you're creating several files, so it kind of feels a bit weird. And the only input that you give as a user of the template is the file name so far. So it's not that configurable. So let's see how we can do configurable templates. When I mean configurable template, it's like for example, the CocoaTouch class template, where if you hit next, you have a new screen here where you can have drop-down menus, checkboxes, text and static text and stuff like that. So how do we do this? And yeah, if you hit next here, it's not asking you for a file name anymore because it infers that from the previous screen. So let's imagine that we want to create a template to create a model, a view, and a view model for an iOS project. Something that, for example, if you say I want to model something for a person, it would create a person.swift, person view, potentially a person view.zib, and a view model as well. So how would we go about doing something that would look like that? It would ask you, okay, what's the name of your model? What kind of type of view you want to load the view from the storyboard? You want to load the view from a zip file or write your view in code? And if you select zip in the drop-down menu, it would allow you to check or not the checkbox. So first, you would go about updating the plist. So since we're not asking for a file name, the default completion name and the allowed types are not really needed anymore. Instead, what we need is to describe the options. So as soon as you have one or more options under the options key into your plist, Xcode will start showing you a configuration screen. And what's an option? So an option is an XML dictionary that can have those keys. Probably some of them are required and some of them are optional. But basically, it just says the name, the description, the type. Probably the most important thing is the type. So you can have a checkbox, text, static text, combo, or pop-up. I haven't used them all, so I wouldn't be able to explain all of them. But an identifier, that's quite important. Default values, and an array of values if it makes sense for combo boxes or pop-up. So if we go back to, if we want to do this, we would have a text option, would have a pop-up option, and would have a checkbox option. So let's see what the model name, like the first text option, would look like. You have an identifier, you have a key that says it's required. The name is model, so that's basically the label that's going to be shown in front of the text field. The description is only if the cursor hovers over the label, it will show a tooltip. The type is text, and by default, it will pre-fill my model. Yeah, it's probably a bit more readable like this. Again, all of this, I don't think there's any official documentation in Xcode about the templating system, and it's a lot about like changing values and looking at what Apple does in their own default templates. There's one thing that is important to notice here is the product name. The name of the identifier of this first option needs to be product name because now we are not asking for a file name. Xcode needs to figure out how it's going to name all of your files. So you need to have an option that the identifier is product name. That's just how it is. There's probably a reason somewhere, but I don't know why. The view type option is the drop-down that asks you if you want to use a storyboard or a zip file. So again, it's very similar. The type would be pop-up. You say what type of values you want to have. So I want to offer the user the choice of storyboard, zip file, or code. And here the identifier doesn't matter, so I've just put view type. And finally, the conditional checkbox. So we only want to enable the checkbox if a specific value of the previous option is enabled. So here, there's a new key required option where you say the other option, view type, when the value is zip file, you are allowed to enable the checkbox. Otherwise, just disable the checkbox. So that's a lot of XML. and it's probably better if you look at it on your own computer. So that's why I went through that pretty quickly. What's important is to understand how this all work into like finally generating the files for you. What's important to notice in a plist is you have your array of options, you have the product name, you have the view type with those values, and you have the checkbox with this identifier. The name of the identifier, I chose it. It's probably not the best name, but it's important to remember because there's no logic, there's no code running like to really generate all those files. So Xcode needs to understand when you select storyboard or zip file and you check the checkbox or not, it needs to understand where to look, which files to use. So it's going to be based on the layout of the folders in your template. So if we create a view modal and view modal.exe template, we now need to have subfolders where the names of the folders match the values of your options, the values or the identifier. So here we have 3 possible values, code, storyboard, and zip file. And then for the zip file, we have 2 other options, no checkbox, so nothing, or the checkbox, and then we put the name of, we concatenate the name of the checkbox behind it. So it's kind of a weird naming, like because my naming for the checkbox is not great, we have a folder that's zip space file, generate zip file. And it's not great, but no one's going to see that, so you can choose better names if you want. But and obviously, because in our case, all of this is purely for the view, so it means that the modal and the view modal will be the same. So it will be a lot of code duplication between those subfolders. So what I've done to fix that is I've added a base folder, whatever, where I put the actual source, and then I do a hard link of the modal and view modal, and only the view file, the view template, is different in every folder. It doesn't work with symlinks. I think Xcode doesn't see the symlinks, or something doesn't work with symlinks. I don't know. I've tried with symlinks at first, and it didn't work, and hard links work better. Well, worked at all. So for this example template, it would look like this. You have the base folder, because the name base in my specific example here doesn't match any option. Xcode doesn't see it, doesn't parse it, whatever. But then all of the others, you'll have hard links to, so the modal and view modal will be hard linked to those ones, and this one will be different with, for example, the different init. If the view is loaded in code, different init for the store. And here you have an extra file, the zip file. So it's a convention of plist and folder layout that make it all work. And we end up with something like this, and I'm going to show you how it all works. If I can re-mirror the displays. Yep. Okay. So where are we? Okay, so here, again, I should probably change the resolution. Yeah.
You can just do Shift Command plus, and it should increase the text size.
Shift Command plus. Yes, indeed. So we are here in the my local folder, my template folder. And now
O command is something you've set up as an alias?
What? Yeah, that's just my own terminal. And here is the what? Yeah. So on the left, we have the file templates, which is the folder in which you need to put all of your templates. So let's create a group, CocoaHeads examples, for example. And I'll put those 2 templates that I worked on previously. So here we have the view modal and view modal template, which has the invariant sources here. And then here the actual templates that would be used. Some of them are hard links. Some of them are actual different files. And what's good about this whole thing is that you don't even need to restart Xcode to load it. It just looks at it whenever you do a new file. So here we have CocoaHead examples, view model and view model. View model, yeah, that's a great name. So let's say we want to create the famous person model. So person, and we say we want a zip file, so it enables the checkbox, and I'll say, yep, create the zip file for me. You hit next. It doesn't ask you for a file name, and it just asks you for a location in your project, and you now have a great model with a lot of boilerplate that you have already set up, and a view that is customized to be instantiated from a zip. So I didn't write all the init because I did that this afternoon and I was a bit lazy, but I just changed the comment so you can see that it's not the same view file for every branch. Creates a zip file as well, and you can even edit the XML in the zip file. So where is it? Yeah, so it already knows the custom class, for example. And then you have your view model that already knows about the model itself. Yeah, so that's a more configurable template, and I think that is maybe more useful in a real life case where you may want to like have a bit of a set of files that make sense together. And let's unmirror again.
The template replacement, what's the actual replacement value?
Sorry, say again?
So in the template files,
Yeah.
you can put the text replacements. What is that?
So if you want to have a look at for example, here, let's see code. And the template files will look like this. So that's the model file. The model file is the most boring, so just the class name here. The view file, it looks a bit wild because you need to get the product name, and you need to say ___ variable. And I want the C identifier, macro version of that. It's a bit too much to explain for this talk.
Probably using the same system that xcconfig uses.
Maybe I haven't used xcconfig in a while.
Xcode config files, like where the properties that if you've got an Xcode config file and you want to take a value and turn it into C identifier or uppercase or lowercase and stuff like that, it's just colon identifier kind of syntax.
Can you change the case?
Yeah, you can.
Really?
Yeah, you can uppercase and lowercase things.
That's pretty good because I didn't know that, and as a result, here the variable product name, blah, blah, would be person, uppercase, because that's what you've entered in the configuration. And I didn't want my constant to be called person with an uppercase. I've just called it model. But if I could change the case, I probably would do that. But yeah, so.
I don't think you can do things like camel case. You might be able to. There's a bunch of different identifier types. Anyway, I think Confuse Spells, Sam Marshall has a blog post about all the xcconfig stuff, and you might want to try.
Because there is documentation for the Xcode text macro and text macro formatting, and I didn't see anything that changed the case. So maybe the xcconfig is a different engine. I don't know. Anyway, there's way more to talk actually about Xcode templates than I realized when I said, yeah, I'll do a lightning talk, and there's only 5 minutes to talk about Xcode templates, but there's actually way more, as you can tell, like about the variables and the macros and modifiers and more options that you could get and that kind of stuff. So how to get started? Copy paste. That's how I started. I looked at the default templates and started changing things, see what breaks, or you can look at the ones that I published recently for this talk, and just play with it, change the variables, and yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to ask questions or look at the code, I'm at Jean-Etienne on Twitter and GitHub. One sec. You can call me Jet, you know that. Useful links. So the material for this talk, I wrote it down in a blog post because I realized there was much more, and I can put links, and you can click on the links rather than just look at them like this. So you can go and check. It's a 2-part article that explains what I explained there, but in greater details explain the XML, what are all the options that you can put in XML and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't even want to read the blog post, you can just go to the text macro reference, the text macro format reference, the UTIs for if you want to restrict what kind of files. But probably in the source of my blog post, there's a book that someone wrote for Xcode 4, and the templating system hasn't changed much. And it's still a pretty good book. It's dated. There's some stuff that you read and you're like, yeah, it's probably not going to work. But if you're really into Xcode templating next level, go grab this book. It's free. It's a like 50 pages PDF. You can just search through it, like if you want to look for a specific keyword. And that's it. Merci. Question?
I'm guessing there's no way to share them with other workmates on projects.
What I've done is my own templates. I've put them in a GitHub repo, and you can check out the GitHub repo into developer/xcode/template/5templates. So you could do that, and when someone updates the template, you just pull the repo. There's probably some third-party tooling to do that, maybe. Back until I think in Xcode 7 or 8, the one where we had plugins, they had a plugin to actually do that, but there's no more plugins, so.
You could have the templates in your project and just reference them. Like you could copy the templates like some script files.
Yeah, so if you want to like take a picture of just that because if you liked it and you want to read more, just go to the blog post. There's all the links and all the sources and the books and stuff like this. And that's it for Xcode templates, and the pizzas are here.
Thank you. So the pizzas are here. Ben's got how to support the iPhone X after pizza. Grab some pizzas. See you in a minute.
Why is it stuck on? I'm disconnected and it's still stuck on my screen.
that. Okay, so testing.
That's fine.
People probably aren't listening anymore. Bok, are you still there? No.
Bok's gone for dinner.
He's gone to dinner in Singapore. Got to be having some satay ayam. Anyway, good evening. I know you're all tired, want to get out of here, and now's your chance because I'm about to talk, and my talks are generally pretty sarcastic and lesser than a lot of things that have come up tonight. Just want to respond. Stu, I don't think he's here anymore. He's gone home. I think, yes, he is.
Yeah, he's way gone.
He's way gone. Good, because I'm got my glasses off. I can't see. But his automation talk, I use Xcode templates. So yes, Jet, they're cool. And I'm like, that's all I do. I look at things that Stu was doing and I'm like, no, never. Just do it all manually. I like to get frustrated with Xcode. I like to yell at the computer and vent. But that's not what I'm here to talk about tonight. I'm here to talk about the iPhone X.
10.
X. So we got this. That works. Anyway, that was pretty good sound. So we got that. And just quickly, it is the X, not 10. And here is why. Matt, stop heckling me for a minute. It makes more sense to me than releasing the 8 and then Apple going like, here's the 8, here's the new iPhone, here's the one you've all been waiting for, and 2 minutes later, like, that was the peasant's iPhone, here's the rich people one. And if you buy the 8, it's old, here's the new one, you lasted 2 minutes, congratulations, you're already behind the times. And as of November the 3rd, this is what I found interesting, like,
Hey,
2000.
It comes out on the right day.
It comes out on the right day, we're all going to be getting it at the same time.
When it's my birthday.
Because you're 3x years old. Nobody knows how old you are. Anyway, so there's going to be like 2,000 models of the iPhone on sale all at the same time. So nobody's going to know which version to get. So it remains to be seen like how many Apple are going to sell. I know they're going to get one from me because I really want the X. Brings me to my next question. Who's getting the X? Can I get a show of hands? Yeah, there's a few. Who's going to go for the traditional model with the old-fangled home button, the 8? Show of hands again. Maybe.
I don't need 2 more.
You can feel confident. I might have slagged on it, but if you want to say, I like the home button, that's beautiful, I want the 8, then...
If you want a pink one, you've got to get the 8.
Yeah, if you want a pink one, if you just want a silver or a black one, then you...
Can I get one in purple?
No. Well, you can go through Colorware. They still exist. That's the only way you can get a red with a black front. Sorry, that was a question there? There is a purple leather case. Just like I have my jet black with a red case because I wanted a black front with a red back. Only way I could do it. But now it's onto the fun stuff. Safe area guides. That thing from DubDub that everyone was just like, no, you have to use them now. So suck it. But if you haven't got the resources to adopt iOS 11 and Xcode 9 like now, I know we don't. Like the designer's like, do it! And I'm like, no. Because it's going to be like a 5,000 man job over like 7 weeks to update everything straight to Swift 4. So we've got to listen to the top layout guide and the bottom layout guide, which we don't. So fully transparent navigation bars will be harder now. Yeah, iFlix. We use transparent navigation bars everywhere at the behest of the designer. So when I read that, I'm just like, now I can get rid of them. And he doesn't like that, and he's trying to convince me to find a way around it. And I'm like, you haven't worked with Apple for very long, have you? Anyway, so there's a long way to go with them. I was playing around with them today, and I rage unticked the Use Safe Area Guides checkbox twice. Actually, just before it was my 3rd time, because I had a full screen view that took up the whole screen of the X, including the notch. And I was like, okay, I want to put some buttons on the bottom and on the top. And just like the original auto layout, when you would go, you'd drag a UI button onto the canvas, it would just be sort of just positioned forcefully in the corner, and no matter what you did, it was like unpositionable, it was confusing, it was blur, but now they sort of just go, okay, you do what you want with it, which is what we want. It moved my canvas from taking up the full screen to the top, to the left-hand side, and then I moved something and it was in the top corner. It was like using Microsoft Word and moving an image a millimeter to the left, and all of a sudden there are like 13 new pages, sirens ringing in the distance, and like...
You weren't trying to introduce a more button to the navigation bar, were you?
As a matter of fact, I was. So that was the... So it was very stubborn, and I feel like it was very, very half-baked. And while I respect very highly everyone that works at Apple and the stuff they do each year, it's like, come on guys, this feels rushed. Just looking at the software, I'm like, no, this is like you've been still sitting in a boardroom 2 weeks ago trying to figure out how the fuck this is going to work, if you'll excuse my French, Jet. I know that's not French. Anyway, but on a positive note...
We're saying some French.
But a good thing is we get true 3 times now. So the resolution of the X is 375 by 812, and multiplied by 3, it's no longer 1080p with 3 times downscaled, which means everything is going to be nice. But next thing that I want to rant about is the damn notch. I'm just going to say fuck the notch. Like, that was my initial reaction. I'm just like, no, I don't like it. It's awful. Ugh, no, I'm going to black it out. But I've actually I quite like it. I was forcing myself to use the simulator, and I'm like, okay, it has its uses. If you have a full screen app, like a web browser, the notch makes perfect sense. But if you're going to immerse someone in a game or something that's like you want people just to focus on that and nothing that's going on in the top corner, you can't even interact with it anyway, so just black it out. And Apple are like, you know, don't do that, it's awful. At least the status bar doesn't fully change color anymore. Like the clock will go green, red, or blue. The clock only if you're in a call, recording, or using navigation. So that's your indicator now. It's not just the full top bar, which is going to be nicer. But I have 145 points of extra height, because the 7 and 8 is 375 by 667. We've got 145 extra height. We miss out on 128 points of that. So what's the point, you ask? And Apple like, don't use my cursor and use real estate. And there's a nearly 200 point high navigation bar here, which admittedly does collapse, but still, my point stands. So here's some graphs, I say graphs badly, images of the safe area. You've got the home gesture, which is apparently, that's the cool new thing. It's the thing that you swipe up. It's just so easy, according to whoever it was doing the demo. Was it Craig Federighi that was doing that demo? After Face ID balked? Yeah. Apparently the employee that set that phone up got fired because he tried to unlock it twice and locked Face ID out, and then gets up and does his demo and it's just like, oh shit, that's not working. Let's go to the backup phone. And it's because somebody...
Yeah, I don't think he would have been fired.
No, apparently he was. That's going around Twitter. I was like, really? For real?
Believe everything going around Twitter.
Of course, that's how we knew the iPhone X was coming out 4 days before it actually did.
It's probably the same employee that leaked the GM.
It's probably the same employee that did it.
He or she knew they were going anyway.
Yeah, and he's just like, you know what, I'm just going to mess with him one last time. I need to make Air Force One's hair move. And I've annotated this graphic. There's area should always be black. I'm not sorry about that. And I wrote this before I used the simulator and I was raging and I'm like, okay, no, it's actually kind of cool. So I already did that. I'm like, I have to put it in the presentation now.
You changed your opinion since about 3 o'clock this afternoon.
I know. I was like really anti. Then I used the simulator and I'm like, okay, yes. And I hacked brutally the project at iFlix. I just opened it up and just went, just literally threw shit at the wall and see what would stuck. And I made it run. And I'm like, okay, this is actually quite nice. Not with the navigation bar. So I'm going to make this app with the black edges. But for a full screen photo.
So, when I showed that app to the Apple designers, they were like, yeah, just hide the navigation and whatever, and just make it disappear. And that was during DubDub.
Yeah.
It's like, that's actually a pretty good idea.
Yep.
Now that this comes out, it actually fully makes sense.
It does. So there were a lot of tips, a lot of hints coming around, especially in DubDub, like with the safe area guides. People going, you need to use them, guys. You need to use them. They're new. We've rebranded the top layout guides, the bottom layout guides. There's a side one now, so we've had to change them to safe areas. So, and then landscape. Well, I'm debating that next, but apparently my slides are out of order. Boo. But yeah, why do I hate it so much, but also love it? Aesthetics, bro. It all depends on your app. So if you have a certain aesthetic you're trying to go for, like you're going to go for the bro aesthetic from the gym, then black it out. If you're not, then embrace it. But since we can't interact with anything, blah, 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 I talked about that before. But I just feel like it won't work that well for certain uses. It's like React Native. It has a religious following, but it has its uses and it has its don't you dare moments. And I feel like everyone's going, nah. And people will be like, okay, yeah, I'll adopt it now. And it's like when Apple forcibly made the status bar part of your app in like iOS 6 or 7. People were like, nah, I'm going to move my UI down and block it out again because that's what I'm used to. Then now every app just sort of just whatever. I'm just going to go under the status bar and change the color. After all, it's black and white. You got really not much choice. So, and here's a landscape version. There are so many problems with this and that. I don't like landscape mode. That feels rushed. It feels ugly. And if you've seen the messages app, it looks even more weird with the bottom app bar, the compose field, and everything else, and the keyboard. It's, no. And what the hell is going on with table views? Like, there's like a checkbox you have to do on the content view. So it's going to mean designing your own custom table view cells are terrible. It's going to be really hard. But hopefully it's just a checkbox in IB, and hopefully that doesn't crash or fail rendering.
You say hopefully.
Hopefully, I have this much optimism, which is good for me, because if, in case any of you know who I am, I'm generally very pessimistic during my talks. I'm like, no, it's not going to work. Xcode's going to crash. I'm not doing a live demo. No, I'm not that brave. I actually have some optimism, and things are looking up, you know, but I still want that. Really shit Photoshop job. I literally, like, it's not even Photoshop, it's Preview. And I annotated the screenshot with black bars, and I did, like, I manually drew the corner edges.
I reckon that looks worse.
You reckon that looks worse?
Yeah.
It's so pretty.
I'm glad
But,
the phone doesn't have bezel like that.
yeah, no, like,
It's a flashback to the iPhone 3 days.
yeah, like, it's like, it is a flashback to the iPhone 3 days. Yeah. 3G, 3GS.
It is 3G.
Well, technically it's the iPhone 2 if you want to split hairs.
No,
So,
it is the 3G. It was based on this network technology.
yeah. Anyway, so yeah, size classes are weird now. I noticed that the iPhone X in landscape is compact width. I was extremely confused by that, and I can only imagine that when the X Plus comes out, 10 Plus does not make sense. It's probably still going to be compact width. So I was really confused by that, and again, I'm ranting about why can't we use 128 point of the extra size in the display. It's even less in landscape because you've got that bottom thing now, so you don't even get the full width anymore. Yeah, Plus is regular width, but with these insets that were forcibly to obeyed by Apple. If we go back to the screenshot, vertical, blah, 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 this space at the top, the status bar is now 44 point in height, which I think is better than having a full bar being 22 or 20. Like, quick, search your code for any hard-coded values of 20, 44, 64, whatever, because now you're going to have to be listening to like 44 and it's not invisible. The bottom is also 44, so an Apple's recommendation, if we go back to the slide that I was going up to, I didn't put it in here, I don't think. I'm not going to flick through and find it. But Apple's recommendation is if you've got something that's 20 points from the top, like in vertical mode, and you've got, so it's like 20 points from the top, so it's 64 on the y-axis, then you're going to have the bottom, you've got to have the bottom space of the bottom object being 64 from the bottom. So you lose a lot of space. They're like, everything's got to be perfectly centered in this display for it to look good. That's what the notch sucks. Anyway, so yeah, edge protection, that was pretty cool. You got to swipe up twice to close your app instead of just hitting the home button once. And that is, yeah, I had to like sit there and just like really stare at that for a minute. That's gonna suck, because if you have like a game or something that just runs full screen, it's already like 2 awkward flicks up to open Control Center. If your app has a scroll view, it kind of sucks. So trying to close your app, that's going to be a little bit annoying, but also great for capturing and like metrics and analytics that like product owners really want. They'll be like, we want this conversion funnel. Now you've got it. People can't get out of the app once they open it, so they should be happy. Oh, and here, I did it anyway. Oh well. I just said all that, so you can either read it or I can just skip it. Anyway, I'm not going to complain anymore because I think I'm losing my voice. I've had too many beers and I know you're all sick of me talking. So if you did like what I said, follow me on Twitter. I'm at Top Layout Guide now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like I was searching through it. Like I was like,
that's so good.
Yeah, and yeah.
At 2x or something.
Yeah, I should have done like at 2x or at 3x, but that was all taken. I'm like, damn. So thank you, arigato, and sese. If you speak any of those languages, then yay. Anyway, that's me done, and I think it's time for Jesse to wrap up. So yeah.
Thank you, Ben.
No questions.
Oh, well, you can take questions on the web.
Hell no.
Hold on, give me this
You
first.
don't want my questions.
No, I don't. Nobody does.
In line will not know whether it's the 10 or the X. All right, so thanks so much for the presentation. That's great. I was a little bit worried about tonight because Gio had to pull out, but we seem to manage to fill the evening till 9 o'clock really well. It's lots of fun. Appreciate the back and forth. Oliver, again, I think Rob was saying, Rob, who's normally here, is in Singapore tonight. He's been watching. He feels like he's missing out because Oliver's been shouting out from the back. So that's great. Means we're on to a good thing. Next meetup, I think it's the 110. These slides should be correct. We're back here, 12th of October. Next month's topic is ARKit. I know everything is just so hot right now with ARKit. I think Vlas is already, I think it's in October instead of this month because Vlas is away today and he wants to present something for ARKit. So get ready for that. I'd love some demos. I'd love just, hey, I'm playing with a thing. Here's me walking through a portal, or I don't know. It seems like this machine learning kind of ARKit stuff is the future for Apple, at least with everything they're showing. So bring your demos, bring your ideas next month. We can go as late as we like. As I said earlier, next month is the last one for this year. We'll have some beers. We'll do what we usually do. Hack Night is, I didn't mention it before, but Hack Night and NS Breakfast will continue to run through to December. There's no reason to not keep those running. They kind of run themselves. So Hack Night will run on the 26th this month, and then in October and November and December as well. The last Tuesday of December is always iffy because it's usually Christmas Day or something. Right. Yep. So, but they'll keep running, and I do mention that in the blog. That's back at still at the Millhouse. NS Breakfast, Friday the 6th of October. Manchester Press.
Yep.
We won't have iPhone X then, will we? No, it'll be the next month.
No, the pre-orders open 27th.
Right. Okay.
We'll have it for the
November 1, people should have the iPhone 10.
But we don't have a November 1. Can you listen?
No, we might have it. We'll have it at the breakfast. You guys, you're on opposite sides of the room.
It's only the talk nights that are stopping.
Yep.
NS Breakfast continues.
Yeah. So the NS.
So check out the blog. If you're interested in volunteering your time or effort or input or feedback or tweets or anything, let me know. This is something I'm focusing on really heavily over the next few months. I am planning to get some other people on board to sort of really help out. For no other reason than to share the load. See everyone next month. And have another beer, hang around as we pack up. If there's any need to go to the pub, I got rid of that slide. I don't know where that slide went. The pub just downstairs. See everyone next month. Thanks a lot.